Hello, welcome to Season 11 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. This season, in each episode, we will not both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about it later. We have 10 previous seasons of doing exactly that, and it's time for something new. This season, each episode will focus on a larger horror topic, trend, or maybe even rumor. We'll speculate about upcoming movies, debate genre definitions, and do our best to apply the perspective of two people who have watched way too many horror movies to different types of horror media. Thanks for coming along for the ride. So this may be a little off the wall, but this week we did Shaun of the Dead at your suggestion, and I had not even thought about this movie in years, and I was kind of happy that you mentioned it.
Yeah. I think the way it came up was I was out in the garage working on the bike one night, and I was scrolling through trying to find a movie, and I saw that, and I was like, oh man, it's on Prime, and I want to watch it, but then I was like, but I'm going to save it for the podcast. So then I messaged you, I think the next day, seeing if we should do it.
We appreciate your sacrifice.
Yeah, thank you.
I think there may have been others, but this is like around the same time, but this is definitely the first movie that I remember hearing hype for on the internet before hearing about it in real life.
Oh, yeah.
And this was kind of a big deal back around the early, or I guess mid 2000s. It came out in 2004. And I remember, especially with the people that I hung out with, this one was really popular and had a lot of people talking about it. What was your experience with discovering it?
Yeah, I think it's about the same. I mean, I don't remember which one of my high school buds had like the poster up in the room of Shaun of the Dead.
Oh,
it was one of them, so I think that's where I initially saw it. Because it came out in 2004, so it'd been around that time.
Yeah.
But I don't think I watched it until I think I was like 18 in Orlando, when I was living in Orlando. I think that was the first time. But it kind of reminded me, even though it was slow zombies, of a comedy, or 28 Days Later comedy.
Well, I think that this was most definitely inspired by 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
And I think that there might have even been a very blatant reference to 28 Days Later that I will come back to. But yeah. No, it was interesting coming back to this one just because it had been so long since I'd seen it. And when I watched it before, I had not been doing a horror movie podcast for 11 seasons and did not have all of that perspective to apply. And so I think there were a lot of things about it that I appreciated more. But I do also think that it felt really fresh at the time because, I mean, like, The Walking Dead hadn't happened yet. Like, zombies weren't the super prominent thing that they are today.
Right.
And so it was good going back and watching it, but it was just like a zombie movie that was funny. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a new type of zombie movie, I guess you'd say.
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I felt like it aged pretty well, except for one line that we can talk about in a little bit. But
that sounds good.
Anyway, so in a fit of nostalgia, I wrote an introduction for this one.
Oh my gosh.
Did you find any fun facts?
Yes.
Oh, we're rekindling the old romance, my man.
It feels
all
right.
So I will introduce it, then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the brain-eating details.
Hey, he's back, baby.
In 2004, Universal Pictures brought us Shaun of the Dead, a zombie horror comedy directed by Edgar Wright, who co-wrote the script with Simon Pegg. This movie tells the story of two slacker friends in London who find themselves in the midst of a zombie apocalypse and go on a quest to save friends and family, and find a good pub. Shaun of the Dead was made on a budget of around $6 million and made around $30 million at the box office. It can currently be streamed on Amazon Prime Video at no additional charge to Prime members.
Perfect.
Like we never stopped. What did you learn about this movie?
So I guess the biggest one, which I kind of already knew when we were talking about zombies, but George A. Romero was a fan of this film, so much so that he asked Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright to cameo in the movie Land of the Dead as zombies.
I did not realize that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I remember watching it. I think when we were doing like the zombie theme and seeing that, and it's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. But this is kind of a known fact, but a lot of filmmakers and everyone really liked this. And I think this was actually the first movie with Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, I believe. They also wrote the film as well, but one of the bigger fans of this is actually Quentin Tarantino, who at one time considered this, I think I said at one time, the article was a little old, but top 20 movies made since 1992. That's coming from Quentin Tarantino. He's made some pretty good films, but those are just a couple quick facts I have about it.
I have a quick observation.
Yeah.
The guy who played Shaun looks like he'd work at a GameStop and screw up your pre-order.
Oh, you damn right.
Was the first line of my notes.
I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, so this one was interesting because I did not remember any of it other than the scene kind of towards the end where they're like having to jump those fences. And I don't know why that stood out in my mind, but there were some people in this one who went on to become much more famous. Like, at the time, I had not seen the British version of The Office, but like Don and Tim from that, and Martin Freeman, who played Tim, obviously went on to be in like everything else British for the rest of the decade. So yeah, it was kind of a interesting deal. Yeah,
it was kind of funny because one of the movies that I was watching around this time. So yeah, it was right. This came out, and it was around the time I was really into a movie called Green Street Hooligans. It had like Charlie Hunnam in it.
I remember watching that one with you.
Oh man, it's still one of my favorites. But I noticed a couple, maybe one or two guys from that film as well in this. One of them was Shaun's like coworker. I don't remember if his name was David or something like that. I don't remember which one. But yeah, I saw a couple of those. So it's funny how like just through random television, or random watching TV, and honestly probably like Netflix, which is where I first saw like the UK Office.
Yeah.
Like that kind of had a play in this too, but it seems like it's just the same feel that Green Street Hooligans kind of had with like a hazy filming. This one kind of had same as 28 Days Later. It seemed like in the early 2000s that may have been like a common thing, or it could have just been like how England normally is. But
it is just hazy. But yeah, it was also a big nostalgia trip for me to see Ed playing Time Splitters 2 on a PlayStation. Yeah, I was just like, oh man,
yeah,
it's been a minute. But I am familiar with this, so yeah, it was cool. It was fun going back through it because there were enough of those things that were kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot, that, or just even the phones and TVs in the electronic store and stuff. It was, interesting. But overall, I thought it held up pretty well. Like I thought it was actually still pretty funny. I think that it was a somewhat fresh take on zombie stuff. I mean, I know that it feels kind of overdone, just like the standard slow zombies. The storyline really didn't break a lot of new ground or anything. I mean, it was just kind of the standard zombie apocalypse, and people are sort of oblivious in the beginning, and then they wake up to it, and then they have to figure out how to survive, but with some actual like funny comedy happening over that. So I think that kept this one a little bit fresher than some of the other kind of, paint by the numbers zombie movies that were coming out around that time, or especially after.
I do have to say, like, I feel like if you're gonna make a comedy horror, like doing it with slow zombies is like kind of like the perfect setup for it, because it gives you the time to like for the humor parts. If it was 28 Days Later zombies, you're running your ass off for the whole, as much as possible. For this, it like kind of allowed them to bought a little bit of time. So I definitely understand it. And I will say, like, when it comes to comedy horrors, like, this has set the stage for any that came out I feel like, I mean, this had huge popularity. I mean, even highly rated even to today.
Yeah.
You know, both the...
Was like a good career move for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's saying a lot for a comedy horror.
And it goes to show, and this also ties into the same thing that we've kind of talked about of like, you know, this was wrote by, you know, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright, who played, you know, Shaun and Ed. And it kind of goes to show like horror can definitely be a stepping stone into filmmaking. We've seen it so many times. Yeah. We've seen it with so many different genres, I guess I should say, and it's just like that's what we like. That's what I like about it. You know, it allows the freedom. So this is a prime example, and I have to say that the comedy part of it wasn't like for me. I didn't find it annoying. Like I found it more funny than anything else. Not necessarily even scary, you know, at all, but just funny.
Yeah, and it felt like an overall very well-made movie. And I'm not talking about like, it felt super huge budget, but just like the directing I thought was creative and kept your attention and did some interesting things. And I feel like the script was very cohesive in that there were lots of like callbacks and, you know, there's sort of the joke scene where Shaun is having the conversation with Ed while he's playing the video game, but he keeps getting distracted and giving him like advice.
Yeah.
And then there's like the inversion of that where Ed's giving him the same advice when they're shooting actual zombies, like later in the way like Ed's fart joke keeps coming back and stuff. And it was a cohesive, well-written script that was meant to make for a fun movie that was effective, you know, it holds up because there were a lot of quality things about it, even though it wasn't super high budget.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one thing with comedy that I love, and something that like I even find myself trying to do is bring back a joke or reference something. Maybe if it's in a podcast, we say something at the beginning, bring it back at the end to try to bring it together. I just love that with comedy. Like when you're caught off guard with a joke that made you laugh 30 minutes ago or 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And they just kind of, the surprise element that you normally get in zombie films is the jump scares. But the surprise element for me with this was more so like some of the comedy things that came through, like having a serious argument and then saying like, what was it that Ed said? Like, no, I'm sorry. And it's because he really farted.
Yeah.
But even like, if you've never seen this film and you're watching it for the first time, just the intro scene alone could just be like in a comedy film itself where they're talking shit on each other's friends who are literally right next to them.
Yeah, right.
It was just brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was some decent gore, like the very first scene where they encounter the zombie girl in the backyard and Shaun shoves her and then she like gets impaled on the umbrella stand and then just like arches her back up off of it and stands back up. Yeah. Like that was really intense and gory. And so a few of those scenes sort of in between the more comedic parts help keep it more engaging, I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, I don't know if it was like limited on purpose or what. I mean, there was like one scene where after Shaun pulled the dart out of his head where you see like obvious CGI blood just like kind of splatter out. But being that it's a comedy, I feel like you can get away with it. You know?
Because the blood isn't there to gross you out. It's there to be funny. And so it doesn't need to be as realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because you think about like a dart just being like all the way into a skull, like that's hitting your brain.
Yeah.
Like without a doubt, but he just pulled it out and kept going.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And also it felt very much like it was made by fans of horror in the number of references to other horror movies that were worked into it. And obviously the name Shaun of the Dead sounds a whole lot like Dawn of the Dead, which is a classic. And then when there's the scene where Ed yells into the phone to Shaun's mom and he says, "We're coming to get you, Barbara." It was just, that was like funny in the moment, but also like very fitting for the movie. And then that little part at the end where there's like the news clip about how reports of the virus starting with rage-infected monkeys is bollocks or whatever. Like that was kind of funny, it just sort of worked in all these, almost like yes, we know we are doing a thing that's very much in the genre and not breaking a lot of new ground, but at least we're going to have a good time with it. Right. And that I feel like is a great summary of the movie.
Yeah. And it's nods to, to the things that obviously influenced them, for sure.
I don't have evidence of this happening other times, but I was really taken off guard because we talked about how a lot of this like aged well or was funny or was like brought back positive memories. I was really surprised when Ed dropped a hard N-word. I was like, you could do that still in 2004? Like, I mean, I guess it is. Yeah. I guess it is British, but wow, I'm just so not accustomed.
Yeah.
To hearing that in a movie, it was all right.
Well, I wondered if like maybe I should have turned the subtitles on, but I was wondering like, wait, did I hear that right? Like, is that what was said?
I'm not gonna lie, I rewound because I didn't believe that had actually just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of wild. I'm even more surprised that Amazon didn't, bleep it or something. But
that's true, actually. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that was, I guess, maybe the one area where it didn't age super well. And I know I said that this one didn't feel like it broke a whole lot of new ground just from like the zombie movie world or like the universe of things that are normal there. But one thing that stood out to me was that I couldn't think of another movie where people were able to get through a crowd of zombies and not get attacked by just pretending to be zombies.
Yeah.
And I guess I can't really identify another movie that like specifically talked about how zombies identify their prey other than like sound.
That's a good point. The only one I could think of, and it's not even actual horror, is in The Mummy with Brendan Fraser, his brother-in-law. It does it, but I don't think they're zombies. I think they're just like under a spell.
Yeah.
But that's the only one I could think of too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Smart thinking.
Yeah. I don't really know why, but the scene where he had to shoot his mom really hit hard for me.
Yeah. That was
like even after she'd been bit and stuff, you were just like, I don't know why. I guess it's just I'm older and have more perspective on life
my theory is that it's because this guy who's been a goofball throughout the film, even though he's more of the straight guy, like, but more of a goofball, shows emotion. Like, that was good acting, he, although it was like, the way it was being done was like super, like almost like childish in a way, as in like, you're not gonna shoot my mom, like kind of something you would hear a kid say to another kid who's like joking. But yeah, I think it was just the acting alone, because I was like, damn, this guy's like, seems like he's got some real tears in his eyes on this.
It took a real turn.
Yeah.
Because so much of the movie was just kind of so flippant and goofy and funny, to go from fart jokes to matricide,
right.
Kind of
and he was like so serious, and then even Ed chimed in after, when they're, which the whole scene after was super. I found it very funny where, well, I think his name was Dave, was pointing the gun at Simon, or he was pointing at his mom, and Simon breaks the bottle and puts it up, like, you're not going to take him, and then Ed does the same thing, and then Dave's girlfriend was like, well, this isn't fair, and so Ed gives her the bottle, and then he breaks another and puts it, like, so she could put it up on side. It was just like a Mexican standoff. It was like, damn, that's a very interesting take. Also, if that didn't make sense, it's because my wife really likes to bring my crying son to the door when I'm recording, and so I'm trying to mute so we can't hear it. It's pretty cool.
Fun hobby. Yeah.
It's great.
Sarah will often wait until I'm talking during a Zoom meeting to just cough.
Oh,
like crazy, And it's like, I've been muted for 10 minutes, and now I unmute to say one thing. Like, okay, thanks.
Everyone looks at you too, because
Yeah. So, watching this movie in 2022, was it almost like a creepily accurate satire of COVID in some regards?
Yes. Yes, it was. Yeah.
Like, especially when the stepdad was saying that it was all overblown and just a couple of druggies as he's like holding his own bite mark and waiting to transfer.
Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, like, did they predict the future here? Yeah.
No, and there were a number of those, like with all the people, telling everybody to stay home, and just there were a lot of things about the announcements and stuff where I was just like, oh wait, we lived this like not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely like, I gotta say, like, I felt like it was a palate cleanser, you know, for, even though we hadn't really been doing movies lately. I'm glad that we saved this one for a situation like this where we're not like doing a whole bunch of films in a row, because it was just nice to kind of watch. I had some laughs, you know, I watched it by myself, and so I was even, I don't know if this is like the case for everyone that's listening, but when I'm by myself, I generally don't laugh. Like, I mean, maybe to myself, like in my head or something, like, oh, that's funny. But I usually don't laugh out loud. But this one actually caught me a few times.
Yeah.
You know, got me chuckling a little bit. So it was just a nice palate cleanser.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite scene? Yeah,
I would say, no, I guess the honest answer is not really. I mean, I really like because of enjoying the majority of the film, you know, so if I had to pick like a favorite scene, I would have to say it'd be the scene that's leading, or that's right before them getting into Winchester, the pub. Mm-hmm. Like even, you know, they're sitting there trying to get in, realize it's locked, and the guy just randomly like breaks a window.
Yeah.
And they're like, they can get in. And then, you know, Shaun takes off through the crowd, doesn't get bit, shows up like a hero. I just think that like that little comedy piece, considering what was going on around them, was one of my more favorite scenes.
Yeah.
But I think just the fact that like the first like half of this film, or like when it started to when they noticed what was going on, just being like oblivious, was just like kind of my favorite part of it, because just thinking like there are going to be goofy ass guys, like if this were to ever really happen, which wouldn't, but if it were, this would be that would be me, I'm sure, where I have no idea what's going on unless it's on, you know, Reddit or YouTube.
Well, I liked how subtle it was in the beginning. Like, you could totally believe that they would miss all these things happening in the background because they were all, like, preoccupied with other things. Yeah. And so it's just like, okay, they're foreshadowing what's about to happen. But eventually it was just so over the top that it became really, like, a comedic device of, like, how far they were willing to go to just completely not acknowledge the situation around them. So, yeah, that was kind of funny. My favorite scene was the fight scene in the bar, where the zombies were coming in and they were playing the Queen song.
Oh, gosh.
And like hitting the zombies with the pool cue in rhythm and stuff. That was just, I thought, a really well choreographed and fun scene.
So great, dude. That was so great. Just the combo of what you had going on.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah. That's just comedy. Like, if you could think back on a scene and laugh, like, I feel like that's just a good comedy scene.
Yeah. But overall, I agree, a good palate cleanser. I think that this one, as far, you know, like, obviously I don't like a lot of horror comedies, but I do like this one. I would, however, put it behind Tucker and Dale. Mm-hmm. Just because I thought that one was such an interesting twist on, like, the classic movie in that genre.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, story-wise, kind of was a little more straightforward, but
I agree.
Still an enjoyable watch.
Yeah. I think that they tried to do with Tucker and Dale what they did with Shaun of the Dead, respectfully, by changing the genre type, even though there wasn't really a huge genre for Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. But yeah, they're right up there with my favorite comedy horrors for sure. I can't tell you which one's first or second. I just can't do it.
Well, you don't have to.
That's true.
But if any listeners would like to tell us what their favorite comedy horror movie is, yes, they can email us at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, and that would be pretty neat. Especially if it's one we haven't talked about. Super neat.
Hey, and if it's one we've already talked about, I swear to God, if you guys don't go through all of our episodes from 2017 and you tell us one that we've already done...
Oh, no, that's okay.
You're getting banned.
just don't recommend us one that we've already done. But I would still be interested to hear someone say,
you know what? Let's just wipe this whole. No, don't email us. We don't want to hear it.
I'm going to delete this. We're not even going to post it.
Got him. I just won't send it to you.
Deal. You're moving
it all in. Nice. Well, that was a good episode. It was good doing business with you, sir.
Yep.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.